Texas back?
But I plan to make well over 1,000. I don't plan on going to sleep tonight.
I'm going to go 71 to 68. UNC versus Kansas.
Why did that get bring up? Why are we doing that?
Woo Suey, Pig Suey.
I would disagree with the hot hand part because, like I said, Longwood's won 19 of their last 20.
I hope it's not close. I hope Texas gets destroyed.
I think because I would have San Diego State in this matchup, I have to go UConn.
Texas friends, feel free to DM me on the Twitter, which you don't know, and that's for good reason.
Hey y'all, my name is Riley Dutcher, and I'm smarter than all you guys because I won Outsiders Opinion's second bracket challenge. Now back to Austin and Kevin.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Kevin's not here. You got Austin and our March Madness expert, Jake, here to talk a little bit of college basketball. The conference tournaments are ramping up. This is a big time for a lot of teams to show that they deserve to be in the tournament. And that's what we're here to talk about. Which teams deserve to be in the tournament? Which teams could potentially go on some runs? And who do we like? So, Jake, which kind of category do we want to start on for this video?
I think we can kind of talk about general thoughts about the current bracketology and the bubble. A lot of one thing that I think is a glaring and like elephant in the room right now is Miami, Ohio. There's a lot of conversations about Miami and whether or not they deserve to be in, whether or not they should be in, despite the fact that even though they have not lost at all this season, they are 31-0. If they lose, that they would lose the conference tournament, that they would be out. So I think we need to have a discussion about the state of bracketology in the sense that why is Miami even at 31-0 even considered to not make it?
Well, I think a lot of college football fans are trying to incorporate their beliefs about college football and what a Tulane or a what was the other team that made it? Was it Liberty? No, it wasn't Liberty. It was James Madison. Okay. It was James Madison, yeah. So there was two teams that were considered mid-major. It wasn't technically group of five in college football, but mid-major ended up making the CFP. And those games were not close, really. They really got shelled in those games. And I think a lot of people think of college basketball the same way. They come over from college football and they're like, hey, these teams can't have a chance in March because they didn't have a chance in December whenever those CFP games took place. I think that's completely false. We've seen teams in mid-major conferences go all the way to the finals, go all the way. I mean, if you go back to 2010, a Horizon League Butler team went to the national championship. The next year, still a Horizon League Butler team went to the national championship. Mid-majors can make it all the way there. We were a half-court shot away from a Horizon League national champion. That's the state of the sport versus we have really never seen a team not in the Power 5, or I guess now Power 4, win a CFP title. That's just never going to happen. It's extremely unlikely because of how much money is invested in all those teams. And in basketball, you just need a couple guys to get you going and then some solid guys in the back end. And you have a solid roster that can contend with these Power 5 schools. Sure, NIL is going to, I think, dampen the ability for mid-majors to contend, but it's not going to be they can't contend. A 31-0, let's put this in perspective. Cincinnati lost to Eastern Michigan this year, a team that Miami, Ohio beat. They're on the bubble. Auburn is 16-15, 7-11 in their own conference, and is ranked, I think it's 12th in the SEC going into the SEC tournament. I don't know how a team like that is considered without a major run. All these other teams have yet to prove that they want to be in the first place. 9 teams played Saturday, which was yesterday for us. All of them lost that were on the bubble, whether it was Indiana, whether it was Virginia Tech, whether it was Cincinnati, who lost to a very good TCU team. I think that there's a couple teams that are mid-majors that deserve to be on the bubble and in. One of them is VCU. I think VCU should 100% be in. But the teams that are on the bubble right now, I don't think deserve to be in over a Miami team that is undefeated. Sure, they played a couple games close. There's some teams that they played that weren't that great. They won all the games that were in front of them, and losing in a conference tournament against heated rivals, mind you. This is not the Big Ten, where there's teams that really haven't played all that much against each other historically, meeting in a conference tournament. No, these are historic rivals, teams that absolutely hate each other. If Miami loses one of those games in the conference tournament, whether it's the first game, second game, or the championship game, they will be in. I'm confident that they not just should but will.
Where do you seed them? If they win if their
If they
tournament,
go undefeated, where would
Go
I see them, or where
undefeated.
should they be seated?
where should they be seated?
I think that the 6 seeds, 7 seeds, 8 seeds this year are pretty weak, in my opinion. There's not many teams. I think the 5-4 range are really starting to set themselves apart, but there's been a lot of inconsistencies with teams. I think probably the only really, really good 6 seed right now is Wisconsin. They have some very, very impressive wins. They've won at Purdue. They beat Illinois. They won at Michigan. Wisconsin, I'll put them in a tier of their own regarding the 6 seeds. But teams below that have struggled to actually take advantage of worser teams. So I would consider if they went undefeated, 34-0, I would say 7, 6. I think that's probably the range I would put them in because they deserve that. The reason why I'm putting them 7 or 6, I'd probably put them 6 just for the fact that I don't want them to have to play a 2 seed in the second round. I think they've earned the ability to avoid that.
Mm-hmm. I think when it comes to mid majors, we're so accustomed to seeing them in the they never go higher than a 6 in this day and age. I mean, maybe a 5. We've seen San Diego State be a 5 before, but in terms of the state of college basketball, in terms of mid majors, we saw FAU and San Diego State do it in 2024 or 2023, and then the past 2 seasons, we haven't seen many mid-majors go very far in the tournament. And so I think what a lot of people are worried about is we're going to seed Miami so high and they're going to lose in the first round. And it's going to raise a lot of questions. And so I think people are worried that if you seed them too high, and then they underperform, it's going to damage the reputation of mid-majors in general. But do we care? Do they still earned that?
I think they have, and I think a big part of it is the teams that are on the bubble. I don't think are good. If we see them in a 6 seed, they're playing an 11 seed that just played them the way in, or an 11 seed that was just in the next 4 in. So let's say they play UCF, who's really struggled right now. I think they win that game. Let's say they play SMU, who's projected in right now. I think they win that game. Those teams aren't that good. I really just don't think those 11 seeds are so good this year that they wouldn't win that game, given how those teams are currently playing.
Yeah.
SMU was trying to play their way out of the tournament. They've lost like 5 straight. What were you saying?
I know, yeah. But the thing is, like, these teams have shown flashes of brilliance. Like SMU's game versus who was it? Louisville. I mean, Boopy Miller was going crazy. They were crashing the boards. They were playing great defense. And I texted you and said, wow, SMU looks like they could be a squad. And then immediately after that, they go on a run of losses. UCF hasn't been doing great, but they completely obliterated BYU not 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And so these teams show flashes, but they're so inconsistent, and you don't know what you're going to get in the tournament. And that's why this bubble is so confusing, because you look at I look at the teams that are currently in the bubble: Missouri, UCF, Santa Clara, SMU, VCU, all teams that I think probably deserve to be in. But any of the first 4 out and the next 4 out, we were talking about it. Maybe Cincinnati is the only team that actually deserves to be in there. Nobody
based on how they played recently, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, previously in the past couple years, there have been teams in the first 4 out and the next 4 out that I've been like, oh, I could see them maybe winning a game in a tournament, depending on matchup. But this year, I don't see that.
I think it would be extremely funny and I don't want this to happen. Let me preface this by saying, do not want this to happen. Would not do this if I was creating a bracket. But I could see a world where Miami, Ohio goes undefeated in the MAC, 34-0, and they decide to put Auburn at that 11 seed and have them play in the first round. Wouldn't that be an extremely talked about game? I feel like those are the 2 teams that have been compared the most on the bubble. And I feel like those questions could be answered really quickly with that. Or we could have it to where they're both a last 4 in team, and they play in Dayton in the first 4.
So
if they end up losing,
if Miami loses to Akron, we're assuming it's Akron. It doesn't have to be Akron, but let's say they lose their conference championship and they're what? They would be
33 and
34
1.
33 and 1. Where are they seated? Are they like
11
do
seed.
we
It's
they're
11
11
seed. But
they're
they're
11
in the tournament. They're in the tournament.
and then they get a shot at a Caleb Wilson-less UNC or an inconsistent Louisville or an inconsistent Kentucky.
Yeah,
Now,
the one matchup I think they would definitely lose to Wisconsin, in my opinion. I think Wisconsin, the way they're playing basketball right now, is pretty remarkable. And vice versa. I think if they were to play VCU, if they were a 6 seed and they played an 11 seed VCU, I'd be scared if I were them. VCU's played extremely good basketball recently.
I haven't seen much of VCU, but I've been hearing whispers and murmurs about what they've been doing.
If they won their conference championship in the conference tournament, I wouldn't be shocked. They could beat St. Louis. St. Louis has really struggled recently. They just had a dismal loss to George Mason. I could see VCU winning the conference.
Yeah. And Wisconsin's got those they got those two guards. They got Boyd and Blackwell, who are just absolutely unbelievable. What have Wisconsin been doing recently that they weren't doing previously that helps them stand out to you?
Well, there's a couple things. I think some of the more important things that they do is they take advantage of turnovers. They force turnovers, but when they score a lot off of turnovers, which I think is actually valuable. There's a lot of times I watch games, especially the Michigan-Iowa game that we all talked about, where Michigan had 18 turnovers, Iowa had 5, and Michigan ended up winning the game. Iowa could not score after forcing a turnover. Wisconsin does that. They put up a ton of points in fast break, and they're able to score the 3 ball pretty well. They shot 18 of 34 from 3 against Purdue. That's remarkable. Purdue really can't defend, and Wisconsin took complete advantage of that. Whenever they're playing these really good teams, Wisconsin is able to take advantage beyond the arc, which is something that I think Big Ten teams kind of usually struggle at shooting the 3 a little bit. They're more of a slow-paced, unless it's Purdue, they're more slow-paced in trying to force it through the paint, while Wisconsin's been very good at the exact opposite and winning games by pushing the pace and scoring threes. Against Michigan, they shot 15 of 33 from 3, 45%. So they're shooting 36% from 3, which is 16 in the nation. But in these big games and recently, they've shot a lot better. They beat this Maryland team that right now, as we're recording, is playing very tough against Illinois, 78-45. They dismantled Maryland and shot 42% from 3 doing it.
So what happens when Wisconsin runs into a Houston or a Duke or any team that could defend on the perimeter?
Well, one thing that Wisconsin does better than almost any Power 5 team in the nation, because it is Power 5, because I consider the Big East a power conference, they only turn the ball over 9 times per game. 9. That is the 14th best mark in the nation. They do not turn the ball over. So if they play a defense like Duke, like Houston, like Michigan, they won't turn the ball over. They only had 10 turnovers against Michigan, who's one of the best defenses in the sport right now. So whenever they maybe can't get a 3 ball, they can still pass the rock around really well and create plays for their best players. Scoring 91 points, I believe it was, against Michigan is no small feat. They're able to get points either in the paint or, obviously, like I said, on the perimeter. Michigan's a pretty good defensive team, both perimeter and in the paint. Obviously, they're better in the paint than on the perimeter. But Wisconsin doesn't turn the ball over against anybody. And as long as you don't turn the ball over, especially against Houston, Houston's one of the best teams in the nation at fast break. They're so good at getting a steal, immediate bucket on the other end. If you limit those points, then you can really slow the game down and play the ball that you want to play. And that's why I really like Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin's got a solid squad this year, but I've always had my reserves about Wisconsin because of their defense. They don't force a lot of turnovers. They can score off turnovers, but they don't force a lot of turnovers. According to our lovely stats.ncaa website, they force 10 turnovers a game, which is tied for 305th in the country. But when you go and look at their three-pointers, they shoot 36% from three, and they shoot the sixth most threes per game, or they hit the sixth most threes per game, and they can definitely score the rock. So it'll be interesting. I think it's going to really depend on matchup for Wisconsin. As it stands now, Bracketology has them up against either Santa Clara or SMU, and I think we can both very easily see them moving on from the first round.
Yeah, and I think they would play the next team they'd play is Iowa State if we're looking at the current bracketology. And I could see them beating Iowa State by the way that Iowa State's currently playing.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it before the video. Guard play, it's really guard play that gets you far in the tournament. And Wisconsin's guard play is unbelievable. Maybe they're some of the best in the nation with Nick Boyd and John Blackwell running point there. And against Iowa State, where your guards are Tamin Lipsey and the freshman, what's his name, Toure?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Lipsey's a phenomenal defensive guard, but scoring wise, he's struggled because his 3-pointer has gone significantly down every season. The only consistently reliable 3-point shooter that Iowa State has is Momcilovic, and when Iowa State has lost recently, they've just been doubling him. They've been doubling Momcilovic and not letting him get anywhere near the 3-point line. And they've just been playing up on him and pressing him so hard that he can't even get the ball. And the rest of the team is left to fend for themselves. So if Wisconsin can lock down Momcilovic just slightly, and not let him get going from three, it'll be a very easy road to Sweet 16 for them, where they would play probably Michigan State as it stands now, but that's a funky little group right there. Villanova, Missouri, Michigan State, Wright State. Now this is obviously going to change over the next week, but Wisconsin definitely, as it stands now, has a decent route to the Sweet 16 and maybe even the Elite Eight.
Yeah, because I don't know how I feel right now about Michigan State, but
yeah, me neither. But they're playing Michigan pretty hard.
Yeah,
at the moment.
rivalry games are rivalry games, though.
Yeah, that's true. I want to talk about some teams that aren't typically on our radar that might actually be on our radar right now. And the first one I want to talk about are the Georgia Bulldogs. How are we feeling about the Georgia Bulldogs? I think there's something to be said about the way that they have turned everything around. Again, another team like Wisconsin that can score the basketball at an unbelievable rate, but does not have the greatest scoring defense. But Georgia is third in the entire country in scoring offense. And I believe they are first in the country in fast break points. They get out in transition so fast, and they're a very high-paced team. So I think if Georgia runs into a slower-paced team, it might be, depending on who they are. If it's like a Houston level slowing team where the slower team kind of controls the game, it might be difficult for them. But if they run into a team that doesn't control the pace and they're just going to completely outrun everybody. So I want to know how are you feeling about the Georgia Bulldogs this season?
Well, yeah, if you just look since February 15th, they won at Kentucky, they beat Texas, they lost at Vanderbilt, but then they beat South Carolina, beat Alabama at home, and then just beat Mississippi State while they allowed Josh Hubbard to score 42 points. But we're not here talking about their defense. They're not the best defensive team. How do you control the pace? You don't turn the ball over. Or if you're trying to make the pace a little bit quicker, you either run like it's little 7 seconds offense, or you force a ton of turnovers. And that's what Georgia does. They force a ton of turnovers. They're second in all of college basketball in blocks with 6.2. They block the ball a lot, and that allows them to spring the break. And while they're not the best shooting team in the world, they're very good at finishing around the cup, and that is the highest efficient shot you can take.
Yeah, so as it stands now, Georgia is a 7th seed playing NC State in the first round.
NC State is
they are what do they have won? They're like 1-6 in their past 7 games.
Yeah, Georgia's winning that game handedly.
Mm-hmm. Do we not believe that our beloved Darion Williams can pull the Wolfpack through one round?
In his last game against Stanford at home, his last home game as an NC State Wolfpack, he had 4 points on 1 of 8 shooting. So you answer it for me, can he?
I don't know. The best players show up when it matters. I'm kind of like NC State is a team that we know has the tools to be good. Darian Williams is a great player. Van Allen Lubin is a very solid player. Quadir Copeland is a great guard. Trey Holloman, Paul McNeil, these are all guys that can play. Even Terrence Arsenault, we know that name. Like that's a squad that could be good, but they are not firing on all cylinders right now. We've seen them do some incredible stuff, but it seems like every single time they play a half decent team, they lose. They only have 2 ranked wins this season. They got obliterated by Virginia back in January. They lost in overtime to Kansas. They lost to Auburn in December. And that's just not good for your resume. Not good at all. And I think there's just there's a disconnect. There's a complete disconnect. Louisville. They played Louisville. I'm looking at this now. They gave up 118 points in 40 minutes of basketball. That didn't even go to overtime.
That's
Like
unacceptable.
118 to 77. That is a 41-point loss. That's like you said, unacceptable. And even like I can't even see that if everybody played, but it doesn't even matter if everybody played. If you're I mean, oh my God, Michael Brown, they gave up 45 points to Michael Brown. Like, and everybody did play. Darian Williams, 8 points, 3 for 13 from the field. So it just looks like they really don't have the mesh and the gel going right now. So going back to Georgia, as it stands now in my home city of Philadelphia, Georgia, it looks like Georgia would completely demolish NC State as it stands now. And then would probably go on to play UConn. So how do you feel about that hypothetical Georgia versus UConn matchup?
UConn has done so much to hurt their view in my eyes. If you would have asked me this in January, I would have thought they were a national title contender. I do not feel that way anymore. I think in the majority, I like to make a lot of brackets. In my main bracket, I think I would still have UConn winning that game, but I would not be shocked at all if Georgia pulled that off.
Me neither. And frankly, I think that would be really cool because we haven't seen let's look. When was Georgia's last NCAA tournament win? Do you know that answer?
I don't.
The UGA's last NCAA tournament win for men's basketball was March 15th, 2002 against Murray State.
Jeez.
Georgia has not won a tournament game in 24 years. So at this point, do we think they're going to finally break that slump?
Yes. I mean, it depends on who they play, right? If there's some matchups here, like St. Mary's, I don't know, they're 7 seed. I don't necessarily know I like that matchup for them. But because they're a slow-paced team and they do kind of control a lot of the tempo and they kind of force the team to play the way they want to play. If they lose to Santa Clara, I could see St. Mary's falling down to that level. But 10 seeds, I think they beat Texas. I think they beat A&M. I think they beat NC State. I think they beat Missouri. It just depends on who they play. I think UCLA would be a little bit of a tougher matchup if UCLA fell from a 9 to a 10. Or TCU. I mean, TCU is one of my favorite teams in the country right now. They could beat anyone in the country. They played at Michigan and lost by 2 points earlier in the year. I think it was at Michigan. I know they played Michigan. I don't know if it was a neutral site game or not. But They played Michigan extremely tough. They could beat anyone in the nation. I firmly believe that. So
They beat Florida. They beat Florida.
Yep.
They beat Wisconsin.
Yep.
They beat Iowa State.
Yep.
They beat Texas Tech.
Yep.
They lost at Houston. They lost by 4 at Kansas. They lost by 6 at BYU. Their only bad ranked loss is they lost by 13 against number 1 ranked Arizona. That's their only major ranked loss where they actually seemed like a team that couldn't hang.
These are the teams that like have an early year loss that kind of wakes them up. They lost to New Orleans early in the year. New Orleans. But I could not care less. Couldn't care less about that. Cincinnati, since I believe the start of February, has been ranked by, if you look at Ken Palm and stuff like that, the 5th best team in the nation. And they were playing TCU tough and at TCU. They won that game. In their last 8 games, they're 7-1. In the last 9 games, they're 8-1. They could not be hotter, and their wins during that run are extremely, extremely impressive. I truly believe TCU is a force to be reckoned with. If I'm a 1 seed, I do not want them to be my second game.
Well, that 1 seed that you're currently talking about is Michigan,
who they've already played and played tough.
So if TCU, as it stands, makes it out of St. Louis, and of course, this is all going to change. Like, this is all hypotheticals right now. But if TCU pushes through to play Michigan in the second round, we might be in for one hell of a second round game. But do you think that TCU has the size to match up with Michigan's?
The way that TCU plays, yes, I think they could. It obviously, it's going to be a little bit different because they played before, so there'll be a little bit more scheming based on exactly what the teams have seen each other do whenever they played each other. And look, TCU size is not their advantage. Their tallest guy that plays is 6'8", but the way they play basketball, I don't think it's going to matter. That's not really what they excel at. They excel in other parts of the game, especially getting buckets their way. They don't really allow too many turnovers. They force a ton of turnovers. They force the 36 in the college basketball at forced turnovers. Teams turn the ball over 14 times per game. And Michigan, as we know, turns the ball over a ton. If we go back to this Michigan game, Michigan turned over the ball 22 times. 22. TCU turned over the ball 11. TCU forces turnovers like one of the best teams in the nation.
It seems like Michigan has turnover issues. Is this true?
I agree. Yes, 100% this is true, especially after the loss of LJ Kaysen. And it's why right now they're not my favorite team to win it all. I know we talked about this a couple times in the past, but
we'll get to that. We'll certainly get to that.
Yeah. But I think TCU could win that game because TCU forces so many turnovers. I mean, if you're going to force 22 turnovers against Michigan, you can win that game.
I think that's fair. If you force over 20 turnovers in any game, you're giving yourself plenty of opportunities to take leads and to win games. And I think where Michigan lacks in turnovers, they make up for it on the glass. So I think Michigan is one of the few teams in the country who can survive turning the ball over a little bit, which we saw a couple days ago. They still won, having turned the ball over 20 plus times, or 18. Was it 18 times?
18.
Yeah, and so I think where they make up for it on the glass, but that doesn't necessarily fly in March. Rebounding.
Put it in perspective. To put it in a quick perspective,
go ahead.
Cadeau and Mara combined in this game for 11 turnovers. That's how many turnovers TCU had. Mara is their 7'3" center. They're very good at a center catches a board, trapping it, or a center catching the ball on the post, trapping him. And that's what Michigan really struggles with because Maury, again, 5 turnovers from a 7-3 center. How is that possible? Not to mention, in their last game, the game that they played against Iowa, he had 4 turnovers. It's a common occurrence that because of Michigan's size, there are some downsides. They can't really handle the ball with those big guys.
Yeah. And as it stands right now, they are losing to Michigan State at home. They just gave up an 8-0 run in the last minute. And so it seems as though Michigan is not firing on all cylinders at the moment. And so as important as rebounding is in the tournament, I think not turning the ball over is even more even more important and more pivotal to sustained success in March. And so as it stands now, TCU might piss off a lot of people, might annoy a lot of people in March if they make it to the second, if they play Michigan. And because Michigan is a current title favorite. And so, but there's one thing I would like to talk about is I want to look at the smaller teams, the mid-majors / possible Cinderellas that we could see this season. I'll start off with one. And the reason why I think we could see some Cinderellas this year is because they are all ranked within around the 12 range. And a lot of the 5 seeds that we're seeing are not the strongest. So firstly, I want to talk about Liberty, the Flames. Last season, Liberty was a 12 seed and played Oregon in the first round. And I had Liberty beating Oregon, which went completely against one of my main rules is don't bet against Dana Altman in March. So I made that mistake, but they got obliterated and demolished by Oregon. But the reason why I chose Liberty is because they were a quick-paced team who could shoot threes. They are the same thing again this year. And they are currently matched up against a sometimes on, sometimes off Tennessee team. Austin, have you got to check out Liberty at all this season?
I've not watched any of their games, but I've heard about them. I mean, I know that they're a competitive team that is, like you mentioned, always going to be a fast-paced team that hits a lot of threes. They've hit 40% of their threes. They've hit 51.7% of their field goals. And I'm just a little bit worried about how their size compares. It looks like their tallest guy that plays minutes is 6'8". And is that even one of their starters? No, it's not. So their starting lineup has a 5'9", a 5'11", a 6'3", a 6'5", and a 6'7", which really, I think against a Tennessee team. Look, the SEC I think is weak this year. I definitely think it's weaker than especially last year when obviously there was a ton of teams that made it far and Florida won the national championship. But against a team that starts 3 guys that are 6'8" or taller, which are taller than the entire starting lineup of Liberty, I think it's going to be tough. I mean, there's 2 6'11" guys that start.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's going to be very difficult. Nate Ament, 6'10", is going to be taking advantage of anybody inside. And they're such a good defensive team that it's really what percentage of threes is Liberty hitting? That's really where they have to hit over 50%, in my opinion, in the game to win, which is possible, but I think unlikely.
I think that is true. I think size is going to be a huge factor. Liberty doesn't even average 30-plus rebounds a game. They average 29 rebounds a game. And against a team that averages over 40, they're just going to get completely demolished in the interior.
Well, to put it in perspective, they average 16 O boards a game. Tennessee does.
Yeah. So they clean up the glass. And as much as I don't like Tennessee very much this season, a team like Liberty has to be firing on all cylinders from 3 to be able to pull off an upset like that. Is it possible? Absolutely. But it's going to take one scrappy win for that to happen.
Liberty
The other-
is the worst offensive rebounding team in the nation.
Yeah.
They're 365 of 365.
Yeah. So Liberty, 12 seed, likely to upset Tennessee there? Probably not. But the other 12 seeds that I want to talk about that I think have a lot better of a chance at causing some upsets is South Florida, USF. I've been hearing some buzz about South Florida. So I did some digging, and this seems like a squad that could pull off something special. But for you, Austin, they are projected to play Arkansas in the first round.
As an Arkansas fan, I wouldn't be scared. We have, in my opinion, the best guard in the country. A guy that's putting up some of the best numbers you'll ever see from a guard. 49.3% from three. Or not from three, from the field. 43.7% from three. Averaging 22.2 and 6.4 assists. I'm not scared. I don't think they can guard him. I really just don't think they can guard him. A-Cup does not turn the ball over. I wouldn't be scared as long as A-Cup's 100%. He did miss the last game, but that was more of rest. And without him, we still went to Mizzou and won. I do think South Florida is extremely good, though. I just think we're a league above all the other 5 seeds. I think we're by far the best 5 seed. I think that if we go on a run the SEC tournament, we won't even be a 5 seed. I think we'll be a 4 seed.
I think that's fair. But South Florida, one thing that needs to be said about South Florida, or at least about Arkansas, is Trayvon Brazile is pretty important to the interior of that team. The guard play for Arkansas is great. Darius Acuff's an unbelievable player. Malik Thomas is great. But Trayvon Brazile is the X factor on the interior. And he sometimes gets in foul trouble. Am I right?
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes. Nobody forces more fouls in the entire league than South Florida. They shoot the most free throws per game. They have the most free throws made and attempt per game, and they hit them pretty decently well. They are a fast team. They are a quick moving team. They will get you in foul trouble early. So I am a little concerned about the matchup there because you get Darius. I mean, what happened? Acuff did not play against Missouri, right?
No, we did not.
Who stepped up for you guys to step? Who stepped up? Malik Thomas. All right. What did he have to do for Arkansas to win against Missouri?
Well, Malik kind of took advantage of Mizzou's. I think you would agree with this. Not the best guarding team. I don't think they defend guard play very well, and so he was able to take pretty relatively uncontested shots and score 28 points doing it. He was 5 of 6 from three. Arkansas as a team shot 8 of 16 from three. He just was able at the perimeter to get himself wide open and make threes.
Yeah, and I think Arkansas is a pretty dangerous team for sure. Pringle, Brazile, Richmond, Wagner. That's a pretty scary squad if you put Darius Acuff in there. But South Florida has this senior-led team that gets out in transition so fast and it forces so many fouls that I'd be a little worried about some players going down early for Arkansas in the first half. So I think that is definitely a team to be on the lookout for. That's definitely a game that would need to be watched. Now, again, like you said, Arkansas probably will make a run in the SEC tournament, and they won't even be a 5 seed. They'll probably be a 4 seed playing a 13 seed. And they could even, if they go on and win it, could be a 3 seed. So Arkansas might not have to run into that problem, and South Florida may have an easier matchup in the first round. But I think South Florida is definitely a team that needs to be looked at. And then the final team is another 12 seed is High Point, who just won their conference tournament. How do you feel about the idea of a High Point win this season?
I think it's one of the more likely ones. High Point made the tournament last year, so they're back-to-back Big South champions, and they are a very good offensive team and a team that will take advantage of any team that cannot score the ball. I think that High Point is experienced. They have a lot of continuity this year, which is definitely important. But I think that what's a bigger advantage, or like what you said about the 5 seeds, I don't think they're that strong. Vanderbilt is who they would play, correct?
Yeah.
I think that they could definitely win that game.
Well, here's the thing about High Point. 89.9 points per game on offense. That is 5th in the entire country. 16.5 turnovers forced per game. That's 4th in the country. They can play both sides of the ball pretty effectively. Now, the competition is not, I mean, like we said, they're a very mid-major. They are not playing high level programs consistently, but that's what makes the Cinderella run, is the ability to force turnovers, again, no matter who you play, and the ability to score off of those turnovers. And I think High Point, like you said, is the most likely of all of those possibilities to win. And against a team like Vanderbilt, who isn't very experienced in March, I think High Point definitely has a shot. Are there any sleepers for you that you've been keeping your eye on?
I think one of the most underrated sleepers is Troy. Troy has won very impressive games earlier this year. They played USC very tough, and not for a crazy shot at the end. They would have won that game. Troy right now is projected, let's see, is it 13? Or
14.
14. I still think for a 14 seed, they would be by far the most likely 14 seed to win. I think of the 3 seeds here, I would much prefer that they play Purdue. I think Purdue is not good, but Iowa State I think would be a little bit tougher. But they have experience beating very good teams this year. They've won some very contested games. I know who else did they beat? Let me see. I know that they beat, I think it was San Diego State in overtime in a crazy game. Then I know they lost to USC. They beat, let's see. Where is it? Well, they beat Akron, which is an extremely impressive win because Akron is top 65 in KenPom. Akron is 25-5 or 26-5, my bad, and they are a team that's going to be competing with Miami, Ohio for the MAC championship. But Troy's won some very impressive games this year. They do have some very bad losses, though, especially West Georgia, who's not good, or Texas State. Both those teams are very weak. But for a 14 seed, you're not going to see many teams that have a win over San Diego State, have a triple overtime loss against USC when USC wasn't really playing that bad. And then they also have, again, a good win out of conference against Akron and UAB.
Yeah. So do you think that Troy has an easy route in the Sun Belt?
Easy. They only have to play 2 games, right? Because of how the Sun Belt's structured. It's very chaotic. So I like their chances. Again, if it was Iowa State, I'd probably take Iowa State. But if it was Purdue, I might take Troy.
Let's talk about Purdue. What do we hate about Purdue? It might be the same thing that we've been hating about Purdue for the past many years. Talk to me about Purdue for sure.
I mean, they're definitely a team that cannot defend anybody. They don't force any turnovers, and they don't block any shots. If we're just looking at pure stocks, they average under 3 blocks per game and under 6 steals per game. They're also not, because they don't have Edie anymore, they're not a great rebounding team. They only average 35.5 rebounds. Now, they don't turn the ball over, and they get a lot of assists, but they're too offensive heavy. They allow way too many points. And the way they're playing currently, I don't see how they win games in March.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of Purdue's offensive success is let's rely on Braden Smith. Can Braden Smith do this? Can Braden Smith do that? I know they have Trey Kaufman-Renn and Fletcher Lawyer, but Kaufman-Renn has significantly decreased in efficiency from last season. And Oscar Clough was not the guy they expected when they brought him in. We thought this team was going to be a rebounding machine, and they're just kind of middle of the pack. We knew that there would be some questions defensively, but the offense is certainly not making up for the defensive woes. They can still shoot threes at a decent clip, but like you said, lost to Wisconsin, barely beating Northwestern, lost to Ohio State, lost to Michigan State. They're not looking good at the moment, and the entire team needs to start. The bench needs to start pulling their weight. And I also been seeing some players get in foul trouble early, like Oscar Clough, consistently getting in foul trouble. So I think your points are very valid. I think Purdue is a team to fade come tournament time, whether they're a 3 or a 4 seed, especially if they're a 4 seed playing like a High Point or maybe a Troy. So Purdue heavy on the fade, but we're liking Troy. Are there any other Cinderella teams to watch out for?
I think Yale, but I don't necessarily like their. I mean, they could beat St. John's. I think Yale's also pretty good. I think they will come out of the Ivy League. I do think Harvard's a little bit scary in the Ivy League, but I like Yale a lot. And then I'd say another team. Let's go to the 13 seeds because we haven't said any of those yet. UC Irvine, I do think it's pretty good for that, and also Stephen F. Austin. They have a fair amount of wins. I think that Stephen F. Austin. I don't know necessarily if I like an Alabama matchup, but if they were to play one of the weaker 4 seeds, then I like what do you think? I think we could kind of go. We have like 2 more things I think that we should talk about. One of them is Kansas, because I don't know what do we expect from Darren Peterson in the tournament, minutes wise, not how efficient he is or how much he can score in a short burst, but how long is he playing in these games?
I don't know. Kansas is the one is this anomaly this year where there are moments you look at them and you're like, this team could make a run. Absolutely. Darren Peterson Darren Peterson doesn't have to be the hero all the time on this team. Melvin Council's a great player. Flory Badunga's a great player. Trey White's a great player. Even Bryson Tiller coming in and getting some great minutes in there. But unfortunately, Darren Peterson is a ball dominant guard, and he makes it known. And I think I'm concerned that minutes wise, the less Peterson plays, the better Kansas tends to play, is what I've noticed. Remember when Peterson was out for that stretch, how good they looked?
Yep.
So I'm a little concerned that if Peterson plays a full 30, 35 minutes, they're not getting the best out of their offense because they're not letting Melvin Council and Flory Badunga work the pick and rolls, or Council's ability to get to the basket. White being able to shoot from 3. I think as much as talented of a player Darren Peterson is, it seems like the more he plays, the more they struggle. Because he consistently puts up shots that are not high percentage. There are times where he can literally shoot them out of a game because he will take 4 straight threes in the final 5 minutes and miss all of them. I think Kansas goes as far as Darren Peterson allows them to. If he takes over too much and he's getting shut down and he consistently continues to chuck the ball up, I think Kansas is in for an early exit. But I think that they have the players to win a couple games in the tournament, which it would just be a shame to see that happen if they don't make it out. I don't know. How do you feel about Kansas and Darren Peterson?
Like correct what you're waiting to happen. Like you're just waiting to see the whatever's waiting to happen. They're down the road and you see the sirens, but you haven't got there yet. I know that I have a friend who's a Kansas fan. He's very adamant they, with a healthy Darren Peterson, could be a title contender. But I think we aren't going to get to see that at this level. And I think that Darren Peterson plays hero ball too much. I don't know if you see the pictures, but there's a lot of pictures going around of there's four of them huddled on one end and Darren Peterson's on the other end walking to them, but they're not even looking at looking at him. They're like, a lot of the time, like if you look at this would be back to the Mavs fans would maybe a little bit mad, but there's a moment where there's four of them and they're calling to Maxi Kleber to get back in the huddle because they're trying to huddle up. But Kansas never does that. It's a team and then Darren Peterson, and you cannot win in March if you are not a team.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think Kansas is in for a rude awakening. And I think that would be really sad because I think they do have some special players. Melvin Council's a great guard. Flory Badunga is an incredible interior forward. He's a great rebounder. He's consistent scoring the ball. He's a phenomenal defender. What does he average? Like 3 blocks a game? Something ridiculous?
Some crazy number, yeah.
He's unbelievable. And so I would think that they could get through the first round coasting off of those two, depending on if they run into a solid team. I think it's really going to come down to the Big 12. Into the tournament, if they win a couple games in the Big 12 tournament and they stay around a 4 or a 3 seed, then they have a chance of winning a game. But if they stink it up in the Big 12 tournament and they go down to a 5, like they're up for one of those 12-5 upsets that happens every year. And I think that would be disappointing. And I think Darren Peterson has significantly diminished his draft stock based on the way that he's playing. But that's definitely a disappointment. And would be a disappointment. Like you said, like it's a car wreck. You don't want it to happen, but you can see it coming from a mile away and you can't look away.
Yep.
So
you can't cover your eyes. But let's send this off with, I think, the most important thing in March Madness. My goal every year, sure, you want to get a perfect bracket. Sure, you want to win your bracket pool. But my goal every year is to predict the winner. Who is going to cut down the nets at the end of the tournament? I think you know who I'm going to pick. Right now, my favorite is Duke. But do you have a team that you think is better than Duke right now?
at this moment in time, it was different 2 weeks ago. It might be different 2 weeks from now. At this exact moment, I agree with you. Duke is the most well-rounded team, offensively, defensively, on the boards, turnovers-wise. They have it down pat. They have everything. Everything moves in a perfect circle. Like somebody does this, somebody does this, somebody does this. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. Everyone knows where they're supposed to be. John Shire has this team like the military. They know exactly what they need to be doing at all moments, and they move without the ball so well, and they communicate incredibly well. They have the most cohesive team at this moment. Originally, I thought it was going to be Michigan. They had all the tools. They had the bigs that could play interior defense and rebound. They had guards that could hit threes. They could hit their free throws. They could play incredible defense. But with the loss of LJ Kaysen and the consistent turnovers, I think there's one thing that a lot of people consistently do when picking a champion is they ignore. I tend to ignore certain flaws. 2 years ago, it was Iowa State. I was so excited about the idea of Iowa State winning a championship that I knew they weren't a great offensive team. And I picked them anyways, and they lost in the Sweet 16 to the Illinois because they couldn't score. And so I think not ignoring the red flags is very, very important. And I think Michigan does have some red flags, and the team that wins it all rarely has red flags. Rarely. And so right now, Duke is the only team with no red flags. Maybe you could sneak Arizona in there too, but we know how that goes historically. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Arizona scares me. I've said that multiple times. The Benedict Mathurin year, which was 2022, I thought they were the best team in the tournament. I thought they were going to win that March in 2022, and I was wrong. And they lost in the Sweet 16 to Houston, and I was like, okay, maybe that was a bad year. And then the next year, they lose to Princeton, and I'm done. At that point, I am finished. This is it. I'm never picking Arizona again. Jake and I talked the other day, and he's like, I like Arizona. I want to pick them. I mentally, I just can't get over the harm they have done to my brackets in the past. And that is what's keeping me from putting them. I still think without that past trauma, I would still pick Duke. I think Duke is still my favorite team. And I think before the Elgin Casey injury, before I really watched a ton of Michigan games, I thought it was Michigan. And then I've watched a couple of Michigan games. They're turning over the ball every other play. They can't have a cohesive possession sometimes because their guard play without LJ Kaysen, I don't think is as good. The three-point shooting, Kaysen's one of their best three-point shooters, is not as good. And like you said, whenever I pick a champion, I'm usually not scared of a part of their game. They could lose a game. Like, none of these teams are undefeated. And if Duke were to lose to a team and the other team just played very well, and there's some teams I think Duke could possibly lose to, I wouldn't be shocked. But there's not a part of Duke's game that terrifies me. I'm terrified of Michigan's turnover battle. They could do that against any team. Again, TCU, 22-11 turnovers. And that's a team they could play in the second round. I don't want to be worried about a matchup for my champion in the second round. So I think right now, Duke, John Shire is a top 3, top 4 coach. Just X's and O's. His ability to call play, his ability to formulate an offense, formulate a defense for his team, and keep all of his guys composed is second to only a couple guys in the nation. And I would be right now, I thought Duke was the best team last year. And stuff happened. They lost to Houston. I'm not mad about it. But I think this is the year, in my opinion, for Duke, their first time since 2015 winning a title.
I agree. And I think that there's something to be said about, when you pick Final Four teams, you got to pick the teams that look the most flawless, the teams that can do everything that they possibly can. That's what happened last year. We looked at the bracket and we said, Auburn in this region is the team with the least amount of flaws. They are almost flawless. They're a great defensive team. They're a great scoring team. They have senior leadership. They can rebound. They're going to make the Final Four, and they did. Duke, they did the same thing with Duke. They made the Final Four. Same thing with Houston. They made the Final Four. They made the tournament. They made the championship. Our only thing, we liked Texas Tech over Florida.
They were right there.
And they blew it because they didn't hit their free throws. They normally hit. It's just a weird March Madness thing that happens.
Yeah, stuff happens. None of these teams are unbeatable. We're not saying that Duke is unbeatable. No team is unbeatable. Even Miami, Ohio is 31-0. But
compared to last season, the top seeds have way more flaws than they did last year. Duke is the only
Duke doesn't.
Duke is the only team that doesn't have a flaw, and maybe Arizona. All the 2 seeds have issues. Houston, Illinois, UConn, Michigan State. Those are all teams that could go out early. 3 seeds, Nebraska, Gonzaga, Purdue, and Iowa State. Once again, teams that could go out early. Even 4 seeds, Bama, Virginia, Texas Tech, and Kansas. Now, I still like Texas Tech.
I do too.
The top seeds are not as strong as they were last year. I think we're in for a wacky season, a wacky tournament. This is going to be.
I agree, and I think this is going to be sort of similar to 2023, except I think Duke is UConn of that year, except they're not going to get a 4 seed, right? So that's really the difference in my head. And I think an important part about that year we hated Purdue. They were a 1 seed, and we were like, this team is not built for it.
Terrible.
And they didn't go far.
They lost in the first round.
Now, all of us had them losing to FAU or Memphis in the second round.
Yes.
All of us. But we knew that team was not going far. And that is similar to some of the teams, 2 seeds we see this year. If you told me this year that a 15 seed won, I'm not shocked. If you told me that last year, though, I would have been baffled.
Baffled completely. Because it was all the 1s and 2s. It was Auburn versus Michigan State, I think. And then it was Duke, Bama. They were the 2 seed. Then it was Houston. Houston, Tennessee. It was all the 1s and 2s.
It was 2, 3. The only seed that was kind of high was Michigan played in that game in the Elite Eight. It was Michigan, Auburn. It was the. Oh wait, that was the Sweet 16. You're right.
Yeah.
It was
Michigan State with.
Yeah.
So
and then it was
1-2, 1-3, because St. John's couldn't score and they lost to Arkansas.
Yep. And that was I said multiple times how much I didn't like St. John's for that reason. The teams are auditioning for you. That's how I look at everything before March Madness. It's an audition. They're showing you their best show. What can they show to prove that they can contend in the tournament? Duke is the only team right now that I'm round of applause, standing ovation, throwing my flowers on the stage
hired.
because
You're hired.
Exactly. There's no conversation that has to happen. Some years there is a conversation. Sometimes there's callbacks, and you're like, okay, let me watch that team again because I don't know. But this year it is Duke. I think that Duke. Now we'll see. Obviously, the ACC tournament still to play out. There's still games that have to be played. This is not my final prediction for who it will be. Whenever we do our bracket predictions, that will be who we think will actually win it. But as it stands, Duke is the best team in the country. I know they're the 1 seed, and people don't want to hear that, but sometimes that's how it plays, and they are the best team in the country.
And I think there are some things you just can't ignore. I remember after we correctly predicted UConn to win the national championship in 2022 or 2023, I did. You agreed reluctantly because you wanted San Diego State to win. We were close. We were so close. Like we were right on top of that season. The next year we were looking at UConn and we saw a flawless team, and we said it's too good to be true.
We talked about it.
We even talked about it.
I remember a conversation where we had I think I said they're so good, but there's just no way they can win it again, right? There's no way they go back to back.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen often.
It doesn't happen, but we just have to look at. Again, it's an audition. And each team every year is new, different. And that UConn team was obviously, while watching the season, the best team. It wasn't even close. And we decided to go against it, which I'm never making that mistake again.
No, the best team is the best team, and you got to pick them. And right now, the best teams are Duke and Arizona. And Arizona historically doesn't have the chops. And one of my other rules in March Madness is don't pick a freshman-led team. And they're both freshman-led teams. So this is an interesting combo for sure. But I could definitely see an Arkansas making a run and somehow winning the tournament.
I mean, there's teams out there that could beat Duke, and I do think there's a ton of teams that will prove themselves. It's going to be a wild tournament. It is not going to be, if you dang, last year wasn't that fun. It was all chalk. This is the year for you.
Yeah. Do we know where it's going to happen? Do we know where it's all going to get blown up? No. It's all a bunch of mumbo jumbo right now, and it's not going to become even more ridiculous after the conference tournaments. After, who knows, freaking UCLA goes and makes the Big Ten tournament championship, and then they jump up to a 5 seed or something ridiculous. So it's this is not going to be an easy bracket to pick, and nobody should expect their brackets to be perfect. I'm just going to be happy if I get a Final Four team this year.
Again, my goal is the champion. I want to get the champion. That's the goal. That's a reasonable goal for every person. I think that the national champion is always predicted or predictable. You can predict it. And that's my goal every year. Thank you, Jake, for coming on. We appreciate having our March Madness expert every time. You know so much about the sport. If you guys haven't watched any of our previous Jeopardy videos, we do have a Jeopardy video with Jake. Jake and I are currently tied 1-1. We'll see who takes the edge there whenever it releases, so please check that out. But thank you, Jake.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you guys for watching Outsiders Opinions.